Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of React Roundup. I am TJ Van Tol, and with me today on our panel is Jack Harrington.
Hello.
And Paige Niedringhaus.
Hey, everyone.
And our special guest today is Shubham Khatri, which hopefully I pronounced correctly. Shubham, welcome to React Roundup. Why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, why you're famous, all those good sorts of things.
Yeah, hi TJ. Thanks for inviting me on this. And I know I'm not really famous, but yeah. So I am a software engineer working with Meta currently, and I have been working on front end for about 5+ years, mostly with React. I'm really passionate about React, and I think most of my development time I have worked with React and quite enjoyed a lot in it. And I'm actually happy to see the progress that it has made in terms of what it was back into 2016 or even earlier to what it is now, especially with the release of React 18, which just happened a few weeks ago. So yeah, a lot has changed, a lot of improvements have happened, and yeah, there's more to come.
Cool.
Hey folks, this is Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs. And lately I've been working on actually building out Top End Devs. If you're interested, you can go to topenddevs.com/podcast and you can actually hear a little bit more about my story, about why I'm doing what I'm doing with Top End Devs, why I changed it from devchat.tv to Top End Devs. But what I really want to get into is that I have decided that I'm going to build the platform that I always wished I had with devchat.tv. And I renamed it to Top End Devs because I want to give you the resources that are going to help you to build the career that you want, right? So whether you want to be an influencer in tech, whether you want to go and just max out your salary and then go live a lifestyle with your family, your friends, or just traveling the world or whatever, I want to give you the resources that are going to help you do that. We're going to have career and leadership resources in there, and we're going to be giving you content on a regular basis to help you level up and max out your career. So go check it out at topenddevs.com. If you sign up before my birthday, that's December 14th. If you sign up before my birthday, you can get 50% off the lifetime of your subscription. Once again, that's topenddevs.com.
Well, we're going to get into all of that, so we can talk a little bit about your background. But I know we reached out originally from an article that you wrote about strict mode in React. So I think we're going to open with that. And maybe just to kick us off, you could start by just explaining what is strict mode, right? To any beginners, anybody that doesn't know what it is, what is it?
Yeah. So as you all know, right, React has as I just also mentioned, React has undergone so many changes. And over the course of these changes, React has deprecated some stuff and they have introduced new ways of doing some other stuff. So in the newer versions, as and when people write code, so in order for them to not make mistakes and to avoid those mistakes that could happen because of using that old patterns, React introduced something called as a strict mode, which is just a normal component that prompts you when you're doing something wrong. And yeah, that is what React strict mode is.
That's funny. I didn't even realize it's implemented as an actual component, but I guess it makes sense because it's right there in because it's just like the React.strict mode that I think, is it on by default?
Yes, it is. So when it's basically when you use this create React tab, which is kind of like the go-to thing for all people to even start their development and sandbox everything. Mm-hmm. It out of box enables this for you, and you have React.strict mode component automatically rendered at the top of your rendered hierarchy. But you could disable it, you could choose to remove it and move it into a part of your application. So it's totally up to you, and you have full control of what you want to do with it.
So what do you think it's going to bite most people about, when it comes to strict mode?
The thing that it bite most to people about was the use of legacy lifecycle functions, which when React introduced React hooks, there was a huge transition from using class components to functional based components, and these functional components had hooks, and whereas the class components has lifecycle methods. So React deprecated some of those lifecycle methods because they wanted to do what they wanted to actually achieve was concurrent rendering. So they deprecated some of those lifecycle components, which were very widely used by people. And so as and when if you try to use those deprecated lifecycle methods, it would just prompt you about, hey, you're using a wrong lifecycle method, try this.
So is are the warnings that we're talking about that React strict mode displays, are they the ones that I see in my DevTools console where it tells me that, component will mount, is one that should be removed, or different errors
Yes.
like that?
Yes, that is correct.
Got it. So I've been using strict mode and never even knew that's what was causing those warning messages.
Yes, that is true. It's funny that we don't even realize that it's there, and it's some, like, in development it leads to some random things that happen, and you're like, oh, this is not what I intend to happen, but why is it happening?
So it's not that we can't use classes necessarily, but it's that we can't use specific lifecycle methods.
Lifecycle methods, yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Because I get this question a lot, like, are classes deprecated as components? And I know, yeah, okay.
It will take Facebook a long time to even push for deprecating class components, because like they are heavily using React, and like I think they themselves would have like tons and millions of classes that they would have to migrate to class like hooks. So I doubt that the time will come soon where you will be asked to not use classes at all.
It's very interesting to me that this is implemented as a component. Do you know, like, internally how it's able to figure out this stuff? Like, is it like, because to me, like, usually a lot of these, because I almost view this as like a static, like a generator, static analyzer, whatever the proper term is. And a lot of times those will actually like read in source code files and parse them to look for certain things. I'm very curious how it's actually able to determine some of these things from just operating as a regular component.
That's a really good question. I like, as far as I have understood of what it does is, like, it's basically something that is a wrapper that is used to display the messages for you. A most sense of parsing and everything that is done is an internal implementation of that particular class that is rendered at the top. So we could possibly imagine as something called as some context that they are holding and some data that they actually like are able to pick up while rendering the rest of the children components within them.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Like, so if anything else needs to publish, like, hey, I noticed this violation or whatever, it just makes it available so the strict mode can shoot it to the console or whatever it is it's going to do with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there other things in strict mode, like particularly if I'm doing only hooks, I'm doing only functional components? Are there areas where strict mode is going to get up in my grill?
Yes, there are. So there are a few things that actually strict mode helps you with. So like, it's not just the lifecycle methods. It's like, so at the beginning, right? Like the React had something called as refs, which the definition of refs changed from time to time. So initially they were just strings, then you had callback functions, then you had react.createRef. Now in hooks you have useRef. So the way of using refs has changed. But the thing that has been deprecated is the string refs, right? There is a lot of problems related to string refs, and I think there was a GitHub issue that even like Dan Abramov had actually commented on, that it's hard for React to keep track of which component was using that ref, and then there might be some inconsistencies in figuring out which ref are you pointing at. So that was one issue related to string refs, and yeah, so that strict mode also helps us identifying this. Then similarly, there was another function called as find DOM node, which would be like, say you want to like get the DOM size or something like that, and you want to get some properties of that particular element rendered on in the DOM. You would actually want to get the reference of that DOM, and you would do you could just do find DOM node and then get that reference and get all the properties of like anything, right? But some like what actually happened is that when React introduced fragments, you could render multiple components, and there was not just one component but multiple components rendered there. So if you try to access find DOM node on a class component, it did not know what are you referring at, which particular component are you referring at, and so they wanted a direct way to actually attach, like get a ref on that specific element. So they deprecated this find DOM node. So it helps you find if you are using find DOM node also within your code, and that you shouldn't be using it.
Oh, nice.
So that is
use ref. If you use ref,
use ref direct on the element.
Okay, nice.
Yes. Yeah. Then there is the context API, which has also changed in, I don't know exactly which version, but I think it was version 16.3 when the brand new latest context API was introduced. And before that, there's this legacy context API, wherein what would happen is that if for example some component used like should component update and return false, and so it prevented re-rendering all of its children. So even the context, if there was a change in context, it did not reflect when within the children who were prevented from re-rendering because of those should component update implementation or things like those. So even so, that was the reason that old context API was moved on to the new context API, and strict mode again helps us detect whether you are using an old context API in your code or any
Shouldn't
child
have been using
component
that
or
anyway,
any.
though. That was
We shouldn't be,
not okay at the time. Yeah.
but it's not that you are using it. It could be that you're using a library that is using it, and React will help you identify that.
Redux.
Yeah, actually, that's the one I've ran into that before. Actually, Paige and I just hit this in an app quite recently. It's those situations are always tricky because sometimes you like it helps you identify the libraries doing that, but obviously you don't have control over that. So, do you like? Is there any way to suppress some of these warnings? Because, like in my case where I ran into it, it's like a library that like it's using it, but I know it's not actually causing any problems, and I'm not going to migrate away from that library. But then every time I open the console up, it's going to yell at me for some internal thing that's happening deep within this. So, do you know if there's any way to get rid of that, or is it just sort of something you kind of have to live with?
There is not a direct way to actually get rid of that, especially in devs, because in prod you will definitely not see this since strict mode only runs in devs and not in production mode. So
Okay.
there isn't an overhead there, but yeah, you would definitely see that thing popping up as and when you're using it in development mode.
I
The
will
thing you could
say,
do is
oh, go ahead.
yeah, the thing I think you could do it is like if that library is in some specific part of your application, you could probably avoid using strict mode in that part of your application. Maybe that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I'll say too that it does incentivize these libraries to because people will complain about this immediately. So
Yeah.
like there's an open issue for it, and because of obviously as soon as you see that and you track it down, it's like the most annoying. So number one way to like trigger developers if you're spitting out a random thing to the console. So
Oh yeah.
So hopefully it acts as incentive for libraries to sort of remove these things and push out new versions and such.
Yeah, that is right. Like apart from this, I think one other thing that was a big step up in terms of React was when this version 16 change happened, which was this entire rewrite of React onto React Fiber. Which was basically a lot of not something that was really visible to the consumer directly, but a lot of internal changes happened where then they tried to optimize a lot of those rendering stuff and see where they could actually batch some of those things into smaller chunks, like do those things there, and then pick if there are some important things coming up, then like prioritize which things they want to execute when, and that is how React Fiber thing came up, and then a lot of those changes happened from there. So a thing that was affected from React Fiber was this thing called as, so there are just two phases in React, which is the render phase and a commit phase. So previously in class components, right, they had these lifecycle methods. So some of these lifecycle methods, which were like component will mount, component will receive props, and like component will update. So what would happen is just these lifecycle methods would kind of execute in the render phase, like or before the render phase. Whereas something called as component did mount or component did update, or like basically those two lifecycle methods. These are short lifecycle methods which would execute after the component has finally updated and everything is kind of settled. So everything is a good enough commit state. So these two phases, like commit phase and the render phase, right? So commit phase is like certain, and render phase is something that was affected a lot with this fiber change. So if the render phase was split into multiple things, multiple smaller parts, it could so happen that some of these lifecycle methods could be executed twice because the render phase was picked up twice, and so on. So if you had an incorrect logic in one of those render functions or one of those lifecycle functions which was called during render, you might have an unexpected effect in your app in production. So to prevent that strict mode also provides you a kind of functionality which triggers these methods twice, so that if there is something that you added in those methods, you could actually see the difference. For instance, say you added a subscription in component will update or component will mount, say, if you added a subscription. So if you have strict mode in your app, it basically will trigger that subscription twice. So you kind of see that two subscription instances have been created, so you will know that there is something wrong. So
Gotcha.
that was one of the biggest things and one of the most confusing things that people actually face. And I like the thing that actually made me write this article was this specific thing, wherein because I was a lot active on Stack Overflow, and I used so many people asking questions as to why this thing happens twice. Why are they seeing the render console twice? So yeah, so this was because of strict mode.
Crazy. So I feel like if I was listening to this, I'd be like, this guy works at Meta. What's it like to work on with React at Meta? As much as whatever degree you can say.
Oh, I have a question, but right before that, have you gotten used to saying that you work at Meta versus Facebook? Do you still catch yourself, like, or does it come naturally yet?
No, it doesn't. I still say I work at Facebook.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's crazy working at Meta, because like you're not only using React to its like a version that is not available in public, but you're also using other such libraries like GraphQL Relay, and all those are things that are not there in public, and there are a lot of experiments that start to happen and internal rollouts that start to happen within the company, and so you're using the latest versions quite earlier to when it has been released in the public. So for example, I can probably say that like Suspense was introduced as version 18 just now, but it has been internally used in Facebook for about 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, there is a huge amount of things that are there in React, and yeah.
Well, that's good for us though, right? From our perspective, we get a really good field tested React.
Yeah. I mean, how do you go about using some of these new features when there's no documentation or really like Stack Overflow, answers to look at?
Yeah, I actually see it quite a challenge, but the thing with it is like there is a good amount of support groups that are available, and even the teams that actually work on these are very, very, very prompt. So if at all there are other problems or people face problems with these, like there are groups that we can post our questions on, and like people from these teams or people who know answers to these are quite prompt enough in responding to those. So kind of have an internal Stack Overflow at Meta.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because is it part of like your expectation as you use these libraries that you're sort of on the lookout for, any rough edges or anything that doesn't work quite right? Or like, are you intended to be like beta testers for these frameworks, or are you just primarily focusing on the apps you need to build and getting what you need to get done?
No, not primarily focusing on like being as beta testers. It's nothing like that. It's like it's open to public to actually test, and so like there are so many engineers even within Facebook that they will have a huge amount of test ground available if people are able to use them within their apps that they develop for their team. So any sort of feedback, like there are so many feedback groups even within Meta that like if something goes wrong, people are able to provide feedback on those groups, and then something can be picked up and improved from there. So that's how it works. It's not generally in terms of expectations that you have to be providing feedback or not, but if you can, that's well and good.
So somewhat related question, if you are starting up a new project, like there's something new to build, is like React the almost like required tech stack, or is it just like highly recommended? I'm curious how that goes. Like if you wanted to build something in Angular, for example, possible? Like would that how would that go? How would that play out?
I think they might have some kind of this internal things wherein they would want to have your like UI code quality or something like that, so that they would want to keep it consistent. But for a normal side project, I don't think that would be a problem. But yeah, in terms of front end stacks, because of this because of the UI component libraries that we have internally and stuff like that, it's always easier to like start with React and have it in React. Yeah.
Hi, this is Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs, and lately I've been coaching some people on starting some podcasts, and in some cases, just taking their career to the next level. Whether you're beginner going to intermediate going to advanced, whether you're trying to get noticed in the community or go freelance, I've been helping these folks figure out how to get in front of people, how to build relationships, and how to build their careers and max out and just go to the next level. So if you're interested in talking to me and having me help you go to the next level, go to topenddevs.com/coaching. I will give you a 1-hour free session where we can figure out what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go, and figure out what the next steps are. And then from there, we can figure out how to get you to the place you want to go. So once again, that's topenddevs.com/coaching.
I think that makes sense because even for companies that don't control a major rendering framework, usually there are standards around, like, we primarily use this tech stack because it just makes consistency easier. So I think even for like Meta, Facebook type companies, it's common to say React or Angular or whatever is our standard library. So if you're going to build with something else, you better have a reason to do so, because it's going to make your life a little bit harder.
Unless you're at Google, and then they came out with Angular, and I don't know how much they actually use it internally.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, Google
Well, I know they use a lot of React.
Yeah, they have a habit of killing off stuff a lot sooner than
That's true.
some places. Yeah. So Shubham, can you tell us some of the, without going into too many specifics, some of the cool things that you've gotten to work on while at Meta?
Oh, well, I've joined Meta very recently, so there's not a lot of stuff that I have, but it's been fun working here. Good learning, people are cool, so everything is good.
Are you getting to work on more of internal tooling, or are you actually working on some of the public facing stuff?
It's a bit of both, but yeah.
Maybe we could ask a broader question too. How did you get into software development and into front-end development? You said you've been involved with React for quite some time. So did you just stumble upon it as something you liked? Were you trying to solve a problem? How did you get started down this path?
Yeah, so it all started from an internship that I had. So there was this project that we kind of had to do, and looking at options of different frameworks and different options, different libraries that are available. That time we kind of I think explored even we explored React, we explored Angular, and there were other template libraries also. I don't even remember the name which they were, but yeah, a lot of templating engines that we deliberated on. And I think in at that time, React actually fit the best in what I was trying to do. And I really, really enjoyed working with React. It was so easy to get onboarded with it. Even when I did not know JavaScript a lot, it was not very difficult for me to get on board on React and start developing my entire application from scratch. So that is how I started. Then I just really loved it so much that that I kept doing it.
And then Meta reached out and said, "Hey, you should work at Meta." Or you're like, "What's Meta again?" And you're like, "Hey, that's Facebook." Yes, that's what that is.
Those things happen. Wasn't a focus initially, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
How big of a presence does Meta have in India? Is it do they have a lot of people working there? I really am totally naive here. I don't really have a sense of what that's like and what your day to day is like.
I don't think Meta has an office in India. I'm not too sure.
So are you working totally remote then?
No, I'm working from London. So I work from London office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I totally misspoke. I thought I saw on your profile. Are you recently in London or?
Yeah, I recently moved to London.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah. And I do know Meta has quite a pretty big presence in London because a lot of the core team and stuff is even there. Oh, that's very cool.
I was going to say, I think that's where the core team is based. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I thought the React Native team was based there for sure. Now the whole team is based there? Wow.
I'm pretty sure that Dan Abramoff, who's, one of the core contributors at least, is based there. So I think the rest of the team is as well.
Nice.
Yeah. So Shubham, do you have any advice for people who are looking to get into Meta? I know that that's a big one and from what I've heard, the interview process is pretty extensive.
It's always like to have good strong fundamentals that matters. Like I think if you have good strong fundamentals and a basic understanding of how things work internally, I think you will be able to like crack any company, not just Meta. But yeah, I think the focus should be on that, and like the rest of the things come along the way.
Is the interview process very like computer sciencey, whiteboardy, or I'm curious, like at a high level, how much you got grilled on stuff like that?
Like binary trees.
No,
DSAs. That's it.
Yeah, you had to have black, red, like binary trees on a whiteboard.
God.
Like,
no, nothing like that. It was a lot of like front end focused interviews, so it's quite good. Like I am actually proud to say that like Facebook interview was one of the first interview that I had, which was properly front end focused and had very little focus on data structures, I would say.
I never understood the whole idea of like asking. I'm honestly really anyone who's not actually involved in like really like the last time I talked to somebody who was actually doing data structures on a regular basis, they were doing like database kernel work, you know, like, you know, I don't know anybody who's doing API work or certainly front end work that has to balance red black trees on a reason. What are you even asking that for? Like, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
What's
It's
the point
nice
of
to
even
hear.
asking?
It's nice to hear that they're starting to kind of tailor, I guess, the interviews to different parts of the stack, because there's, like you say, there's very few front end engineers who are going to need to know how to traverse binary trees or talk in depth about that sort of thing. So, why ask them about it?
Trees are still fine, like because DOM is like a tree, but then other stuff, yeah.
yeah, even with the DOM though, it's not like you're well, I mean, anymore you don't even really traverse it because every library is gonna it's gonna abstract that from you. But even when you do, it doesn't work anyway like the classic computer science
true.
stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, that is right.
Cool. So, I mean, we started off talking about one of your many written pieces, but I see, looking at your Medium profile, that you have quite a lot of other ones. Do you want to talk about any of maybe the collapsible menu in React with intersection observer? That looks pretty interesting.
Yes, I think that was the first article that I wrote. And I think like initially when I started thinking about writing an article, I had no idea of what topic I should choose, because in my mind, it's like everything is like everyone should know everything like already. So there's so many documentation available for everything that like you search a topic and you'll find an article on it. And I was like, why should I write an article on it again? But yeah, this was one thing that I actually found very fun and interesting when I tried to think about it. It was like if you have multiple menus in an F bar and if you try to collapse it, like if you try to render it on a smaller screen, they kind of go into an overflow menu. And this is a common interaction that sometime we used to do with CSS, like where you had media queries to actually decide how many things you want to render, and the rest you would render in an overflow menu. But this was another approach that like some of my friends and we kind of discussed, and we thought that intersection observer was really, really good fit here, because it kind of told you what item fits within your view and what doesn't, and so you can decide which one goes in the overflow menu and which one renders there in the space available. So that was the most interesting one. I think I enjoyed writing.
Very cool.
So do you find intersection observers work really well with React? I mean, is it kind of a natural flow there?
Yes, it does, right? Like, it's not a lot difficult to actually abstract it out and even use it within React. So it can easily go into a lifecycle method wherein you can initialize an intersection observer and then like add it to elements that you want it to work on.
I'm curious, what got you into writing the articles? Was it just the fact that you wanted to help people out? Was it because you were like job hunting, trying to build your name? Like what was the motivation? Because you do have quite the library of articles out here. So I know firsthand it's a decent amount of work to put that stuff together. So I'm just curious what the motivation was, at least initially.
So like I used to contribute a lot on Stack Overflow, like insane amount of time I used to spend on Stack Overflow. Like I have quite a profile there. But like I heard it from a lot of people that you should write articles, and this was one of the most challenging thing for me, because in order to write an article, you have to think what you want to say, what you want to talk about. Whereas on Stack Overflow, someone has asked you a question and you just reply back. So you don't have to prepare that content yourself. So I just picked up this motivation that I'll challenge myself and I try to write an article. So I started with one. Then I found out that there is another topic that I can write about. I just picked that up. And yeah, like week after week, I saw that there was engagement on those articles and people actually liked it. So I kept writing more.
Yeah.
It gets a little addictive, right? You kind of get into
it is
structuring content and thinking about ways to improve how you present stuff, making graphics.
And I found your Stack Overflow profile, and it is indeed quite impressive. You have you have 20 times the reputation points that I have on there.
Woo!
So I have to say, like, a genuine thank you from behalf of all of us, because I think statistically it is very likely that you have helped me on a random Google search throughout the last few years. So much appreciated, because I know there's a lot of time that goes into that. So
yeah,
you've helped make the internet a better place.
Yeah,
it's a great thing about the dev community.
Yeah.
It really is good.
Yeah, actually, I've enjoyed helping people, and it kind of gave me a lot of pleasure when like someone says that their problem was resolved, and I was like, oh wow, that is nice. and also, like, what I have always thought about is that it has also improved my speed and my understanding of things, because as in when I was trying to help someone, I was also trying to debug the same thing on my machine and learning something new to try to answer that. So work both ways.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see what problems folks come up with. Like, I don't know how you got there, but it's actually kind of interesting. And now we're going to fix it. But I don't think you should have gotten there in the first place. But still, it's interesting to see how to fix it. You fix your way out.
It is interesting, because I spent quite a bit of time on Stack Overflow, not nearly at the scale you did, but a decent amount of time on Stack Overflow several years ago. And I did find it really helped, even learn a technology, because lots of times if you're trying to learn, say, some framework, you can't really come up with a contrived, build a silly app. It's not the greatest way to learn, but sometimes just helping others see what their problems are and what you can get through it. Not only are you benefiting someone, but it gives you a way of starting to experiment with that framework in a very real way, solving real problems actual people are having. So it is actually a really good way to get familiar and learn a technology too.
It's not to-do list number 8,542.
Yes, exactly.
Make a to-do list, but have it connect to, some random ticker service, and what? No, please.
That's the one downside of Stack Overflow, though, is you always get the people that they post their issue and it's the most specific thing ever. They've got references to their own servers and their own stuff, and it's 300 lines of code, and they're like, "Why am I getting this error?
Can you help me do my job, please?"
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, can you do my job for me? Yeah. The other ones I find frustrating are the ones that are super vague, and it's there's just you're only giving 20% of the information that I would need to figure this out, and those never get answered. They just kind of linger. Yeah.
Actually, that is a good question. Since you spent so much time answering Stack Overflow questions, for all of us out there that have problems that want to get help from Stack Overflow, do you have any tips for people if you want to get help on Stack Overflow? What are some things you should do as the asker? What are some things you should provide to make the answerers' lives easy? Yeah.
I think the best thing that can get you an answer is that if you have a sandbox or something of your problem already there in the Stack Overflow. So it's easier for the person trying to look at your problem to see on your sandbox and then debug it there and provide an answer to you. So I think that is something that has worked. And when I used to see it, I always found those kind of questions the easiest to answer, and the fastest to answer. The other thing that kind of works is that if people are able to give in like the smallest amount of details clearly, like if like this is the piece of code where I'm facing the problem and I'm seeing this error, like is there anything that I could be missing? So if people can narrow down on what the problem is in, that's another thing that can help them get an answer easier. Like rather than having an entire app and this is the error I'm getting and this is my entire app and like
could be
Yeah, and
coming
here's
from
the-
anywhere.
Yeah, here's the 3-hour setup procedure to initialize Mongo, and you're like, no. And then of course, like the thing that they're worried, like this biting them in the butt, has nothing to do with any of that, right? It's always like some use effect is getting called twice or something like that, and you're like, yeah. Go and take your problem, hone it down to just the smallest possible example that demonstrates the problem. Put it on Code Sandbox, and you're probably going to get an answer.
And I think like Code Sandbox, Stackblitz, all those services, they're a great way of helping you isolate the problem too, because if you can't get it running in those environments, that means your example is tied to something that is specific to your project. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you do think it's a problem outside of your app, then you should be able to get it to running. You might have to do some work, right? It's not necessarily going to be easy, but you might have to like mock out some servers or whatever, but it'll at least let you, it's the best way to get help, because otherwise you're not going to benefit from others because they won't be able to figure out what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, another good thing is to be able to, I'm sorry.
So if you're expecting someone to invest time in something that you are stuck on, I think it's good that you also invest time to make it easier for them to understand what you are stuck on.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well said.
Yeah. In fact, actually, another good thing to do is to let people know what working looks like. Like sometimes
this is what it's supposed to.
This is broken. Okay. Okay. Is it really? It seems to work. Like, oh no. It's not giving the right answer. Wait, what's the right answer then? Like, what?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like when you're at work and you are stuck on something and you get one of your coworkers to come over and give you a hand. You've got to tell them already what didn't work, what you've already tried, and what you think the issue is, and then from there you can figure it out. But yeah, don't just like post the vague, it doesn't work, I don't know why.
Are the worst.
Help me.
Yeah. And also I would give yourself a little bit of time, like maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes to actually try and work through the problem yourself. Read the error messages, try and see what the difference was between where you were and where it's not. And now that it's not working, like, did you add a library? Maybe that's the problem. Something. Try and give yourself the opportunity to do some debugging before immediately like jumping on Discord or jumping in a Stack Overflow and it doesn't work. Here's my 300 lines of code. It doesn't work. What?
Yeah, true.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Shubham, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name still correctly. But is there anything we've missed? Any articles that you wanted to chat about? Any topics you're interested in that you wanted to talk about that we haven't brought up?
I think like that was good. Like I think the article which I actually would have pointed to was this collapsible menu, which we already discussed. There's one more article that I did write, which I enjoyed a lot, was this custom pagination component in React, which we all use a lot in one way or the other, but mostly from a library. So it's one where we could just like with a bit of a work, bit of small understanding, a good startup, small start that you can do if you want to actually like write something on your own and like test it out, learn something. So this is another thing that I actually like as a small project in itself as well.
Cool. Yeah, and we will make sure to link up to your Medium profile in the show notes as well, so people that want to check all these out can find all of them there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey folks, if you love this podcast and would like to support the show, or if you wish you could listen without the sponsorship messages, then you're in luck. We're setting up new premium podcast feeds where you can get all of the episodes released after Christmas 2020 without the ads. Signing up will help us pay for editing and production, and you can go sign up at devchat.tv/premium.
So with that, why don't we move on to the picks, where we pick something fun or interesting in our lives or in technology. And Jack, do you want to kick us off today?
Sure. So I just got turned on to this Touch Portal. It's pretty cool. It's an application for like an iPad or an iPhone or mobile device where you can hook up macros to it, and you can use your phone while you're in Zoom meetings or whatever to automate processes in your life. It's pretty cool. I love these little gadgets like this, and the idea that you can kind of extend it into your own code and get it to execute your own code and do cool things for you, like start a build or whatever. It's pretty cool.
So what sort of things have you automated with it or tried to automate with it?
Mostly around the Discord stuff. So, running a fairly large Discord channel server has a lot of little, things that you need to do. So yeah, just trying to do that.
Gotcha.
But we'll see.
Cool.
Who knows where the future will take me.
Awesome. Paige, any picks this week?
Sure. So my pick this week is going to be a TV show that I've been watching and it's just wrapped up its series finale. And it is the show Ozark that's on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it is about a family that ends up moving to the Lake of the Ozarks, which is southern Missouri, to launder money for some big time illegal enterprises. We'll just put it that way, because there's a couple different ones that turn up during the course of this show. But it just wrapped up its series, and it's gritty and exciting, and you never know where it's going next. So if you're looking for something that's like that, I would definitely say give it a watch. And it's kind of fun because a lot of it was actually filmed in Atlanta, where I live. So it's cool to recognize some local landmarks where they're actually trying to make it look like the Lake of the Ozarks and not Lake Lanier, which is where they ended up filming a lot of it here.
Is this season like the last, or is the show done at this point?
Yeah, I think it's 4 seasons altogether, and it's, probably 14, 15 episodes a season. So there's some good watching there.
Cool. They're not going to do some sort of Better Call Saul mega spinoff.
I mean, they could. There's definitely some stuff that was left open, but I don't know if they'll keep going that way or not.
Cool. So my pick for this week is going to be the Freakonomics podcast. I think I've actually picked it before, if you're a very long time listener of React Roundup, but it's a show I've listened to for quite a while, and their last few episodes have been quite good. They're diving into the crazy world that is the U.S. college/university system, and like why it's crazy expensive, and why how these elite private schools can work, and whether Ivy League schools are a good thing for society. Dealing with some pretty deep questions, and so I've found it pretty interesting. And the show is just good in general. It's always a good listen. So that will be my pick.
Nice.
And Shubham, any picks for us this week?
Yeah, so I have also a show that I cannot recommend enough, which is This Is Us. I have been watching it, and it's just so incredible and so emotional, and it's kind of running the last season and probably last 3 or 4 episodes to go, and it's the best drama series I have ever watched. Yeah, if you are looking into something in that genre to watch, I think that could be the best thing to start.
I've heard good things about it. I have not watched it yet, so I'll put it on my list.
Yeah, I haven't watched it either. But then again, God, there's so much TV. It's just an outrageous number of shows we could watch.
Same though. Everything I've heard about it is crazy positive. So I think I need to get around to it also. Well, Shubham, this has been fun. My last question for you today: if people want to follow you, anything else, what's the best place to reach out? Like, this is a great place. Any links you have, social channels? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I am decently active on Twitter. Like Shubham Reacts is my Twitter handle. So.
Very nice.
Yeah. So I think that could be the channel that anyone can reach out to me on. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Other than that, not really active on much of social media platforms. So
that's quite okay. But this has been an awesome chat. Thanks for joining us. I had a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Same here. Yeah, I had a nice chat.
Very
nice. Thank you guys. Yeah.
Thanks everybody, and see everyone next week.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.